I buried my dog. I think. Last month. There was so little left of him. And his once golden coat was so faded and faded, that this hollow, frail, fanged corpse was hardly the cheerful, energetic goody-goody who chased the neighbor's cars so briskly, retrieved the red ball so playfully, and served me so faithfully as my companion in the park when I needed to show off his inherent cuteness and act as a girl magnet. I named him Loki, simply because his pointy little ears resembled the classic helmet in the Marvel film universe, and he always grinned like a god. This name was chosen, I must emphasize, without any idea of the hell his death would send me to. That morning I awoke with a strange, indefinable sense of dread. I was brought out of my gray, disturbing dreams by the sound of silence. I could hear neither Loki's jubilant morning bark, nor his hungry scrabbling at the door, nor the stomping of soft paws. I intuitively sensed that something was wrong. There was a draught in the house, and as I went downstairs, I found the front door open. I cursed in bewilderment. Always. But then somehow the door was open and the dog got out. Imagine my shock at the sight of this dead lump of nauseating flesh that had once been my best friend. My throat constricted. I turned pale with shock. My skin clenched from the cold, my jaw dropped open. I didn't even notice how I had inadvertently stepped on his remains. I was not only shocked, but puzzled. The boy wasn't sick. There were no visible injuries. How did it happen? What killed him? My cousin Ivor is a veterinarian. I was saddened by my dog's death and disturbed by its mystery. A rational mind would have told me that there was nothing supernatural or strange about it. Perhaps it was a brain tumor or he had eaten something he shouldn't have. Ivor sympathized with me and offered to do an autopsy to satisfy my curiosity in some way. To use a shovel, albeit carefully, to lift my friend up and put him in a black bin bag was so shameful and disrespectful. As I drove to my cousin's clinic, I felt like no explanation would help. Wouldn't be enough, no words or condolences would replace the gap in my life and the hole in my heart. The autopsy took several hours. Ivor told me the results would be ready in a few weeks, and looked troubled by what he had already seen. I didn't ask him any questions and he handed me my best friend in a small unmarked box. I buried him in the backyard and resigned myself to living without Loki. People grieve in different ways, and I suppose we react differently to different kinds of death. When my mother took her own life, I lost my appetite and the food I pushed down my throat felt like ashes. Within days of Loki's death, however, I found myself strangely, unquenchably hungry. I naturally assumed it was a coping mechanism, and wondered if I would return to normal, if I would return at all, when I received the results of the autopsy. Strangely, no matter how much I ate, I couldn't fill my stomach and still felt hungry. My friends were shocked and concerned about my weight loss. They knew about my dog and also thought I was losing weight out of grief. I didn't rack my brains and alarm them with my weird, nightmarish fantasy that my mouth wasn't the only one demanding food. There were 1,000 appetites inside me that cried out for more, more, more. Something that could never be satisfied or even questioned. I began to eat things I had never eaten before. Escargot had always seemed disgusting to me, but now I devoured plate after plate of snails, craving them in the middle of the night. The pleasure of eating was gone. I just knew I had to eat them. I lost a lot of weight. I spent days in the house with the curtains closed. I avoided the sun and often let my phone ring and ring until friends left messages, which I deleted without listening. Sleep came slowly and was filled with disturbing dreams that I forgot by the time I fully came around. Sometimes all that woke me up was the rumbling of my own empty stomach demanding that I go to the kitchen for a bowl of cottage cheese. Pizza from the freezer, a bruised apple that seemed about to go bad, Or yes, also those awful snails. It didn't matter. Nothing tasted good and nothing could satisfy my hunger. The trip to the toilet was long and painful. I flushed instantly because I didn't want to know if there was blood in my feces. My skin was pale. Black rings appeared under my eyes and I didn't recognize my face in the mirror when I looked at myself. I felt like I was falling apart. I didn't want to go to the doctor. Nothing they could tell me could make me feel better, and there was no cure for whatever it was. There was something new inside me. This thought, an unanswered question, like a hunger, kept me awake at night. Had I contracted it from Loki? Was it death? Or something worse? There are questions in this life that we don't really want answers to. I got mine last night, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to sleep again. I woke up in pain, a terrible pain that I had never felt before and couldn't define. I pulled myself up and found blood on the sheets. To my horror, I realized that the blood was coming from my back. I gasped at the nastiness of the situation, which I still didn't understand, not at all. There was so much blood that I felt shabby and completely without strength. I don't know if there was anything left in me for tears, so I just howled about how unfair it was, how painful, how senseless. My dry, self-indulgent sobs were only interrupted by the ringing of the phone by my bed. It was Ivor, of course, pretty much the only number I answered these days. He didn't usually call at such an unsociable hour, but he knew I was suffering and was waiting to answer. If he knew that not only was I waiting for the results of my dog's autopsy, but that I myself was sick with something indescribable, he would have spoken with more care and caution. If I had known what he wanted to tell me, I wouldn't have picked up the phone.
I know it's late, but I got the results. Do you want to talk to me tomorrow?
No, quote.
I answered quickly, perhaps louder than I should have. I sighed and tried to calm down.
I'm sorry, I just want to know now. Please.
Yeah.
He had no idea what I was going through. He hadn't seen me since the day Loki died.
Turns out the dog had parasites.
Parasites? I swallowed as the disgusting word rolled over my tongue and let it settle.
You traveled to Indonesia recently, didn't you?
He asked me insistently.
Indonesian tapeworm.
He announced. I knew they were worms, but this one was very rare. Almost extinct in the wild. He looked worried. Apparently, it's usually only found in the intestines of orangutans.
Orangutans.
I repeated dryly, rubbing the bridge of my nose.
God knows how it got into your dog.
So it's...
I sighed, trying to gather my thoughts.
That's bad, right?
There hasn't been much research, but it seems to be the kind of thing that depletes the host. Spreads from the gut to places unknown. Multiplies inside, attaches itself to the digestive system, grows and grows while the body eats and shrinks and weakens. They even penetrate the brain, adjusting behavior so that the host eats what it doesn't want. And they exist until there is nothing left but dry, empty husks.
I felt a chill run through my body. I could barely ask that next question, but I had to know.
How? How do they spread? Do they have to eat the host or something?
That's one way, or move to a new host that's been in contact with the old one in some way.
That was it. I remembered sobbing and hugging Loki on the lawn outside the house that morning and forgot about that detail, which then just seemed like the reality of a tragic day. I was more concerned with how it happened to the dog than how to wash my feet. Now I had it all figured out. I didn't even care that my screen shattered on the hard wooden floor. I didn't care about anything else. I wanted to get out of this ugly world. I wanted to be alone. No sooner had the phone fallen than I was pierced by a sharp, searing pain in my back. I felt like I was being torn apart. My insides were on fire. I ran to the bathroom, even though I knew it was useless, trying to pump the evil out of me. I sat there for hours, sobbing dryly and hoping for relief that never came. And then I heard it. A faint sound coming from within myself. It started with a strange hissing sound, like steam escaping, and then it spoke.
"He's right,"
Came a strange, high-pitched voice that I could only call inhuman.
"We're inside you, and we're not going anywhere. We like it here, crawling around, feeding on what you eat, sucking you dry, living in your home. It's not just your insides. We're everywhere. Soon we'll be in your brain. You won't be able to think for yourself. You'll be all ours. You will lose your strength, and we will get stronger and stronger."
At that moment, I felt a sort of squirming come out of me. I jumped with shock and felt a disgust like I had never felt in my life when I looked in the mirror and saw a thin and slimy king worm sticking straight out of me. I'll never forget its beady little eyes and sharp fangs when it grinned at me and said, "You're welcome to eat it," and slipped back into my intestines. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't care. My thoughts are foggy. All I do in the last days of my life is eat and eat and eat, feeding the monsters inside me. Soon it will happen and they will crawl into my brain. I hope they do it quickly. I am their slave, but maybe my terror will be replaced by calm when they eat me alive. They will leave me an empty shell, like the last time I saw my beautiful dog. Remember me young and beautiful as my friend Loki was. In the meantime, I'm in hell, where the worm talks to me and won't die.